All right, here we are, and we have a 4L, I believe this is a 4L70, because we do have a pickup for the pump. Of course, the pump sleeve, if we look down in here, you're going to see a large hole, and subsequently to that large hole, there's a hole there, and then there's a notch right there. These, you got to get these right, because these are not interchangeable. But anyway, we're going to use an inventory system here until this pump is fully reassembled. Let's get everything out of the way that isn't part of the pump. So here we have our two pump halves. So if we go down the list here, so straight edge, pump bushing, front seal, test on the torque converter hub and resize it with a wood block if necessary, black rope spring, steel cover, vane housing, 4-turn pivot spring, black and orange seal. In this case, it's actually black and green seal, because that's the way it comes. The pivot post, return spring, and Jim's genius idea to install that with a 2-inch clamp. And then we have the pump gear itself. We got the bottom vane, the snowflake, the rotor, 13 vanes, the top ring. Then we got some things to check. Everything on the pump body, the pump cover, is you just check. I mean, you know, and it's almost never bad. Then we got our snowflake rotor, either 13 or 10 vanes, a top steel ring, test fitted again on the torque converter hub. And then step 11 is the front and rear bushings. The lockup valve and spring, boost valve, spring, filter seal, hourglass filter with black O-ring, pump alignment tool, 5 13mm bolts, which are right here. We're going to torque those to 18.5 pounds. Large pump O-ring where applicable. It's not. This has got a case, so that doesn't apply. Yellow 2-tab thrust washer. Don't want to forget that. Speed sensor, orange O-ring, and 8mm bolt. What I did on this is you can get this 8mm bolt confused. So as soon as I take it out, I just put it right back in its spot and I wash it that way. And I eliminate either installing the wrong bolt or, because they're different sizes, they're different lengths. Or having to look for it. And then we're going to test fit everything together to the input drum, which actually isn't done yet. So the first thing we got to do is the pump bushing. So here's my replacement pump bushing. I'm going to do the front seal at the same time. And then I might as well put the retainer back on. So this is the tool that I use for the pump bushing, and I do that. I use this, it's not, of course, a standard tool, but if you look, you can see this is bigger than the outer diameter of the bushing, but it's smaller than this step in the pump. So that makes this ideal for getting it to the exact right depth. These pumps, when they were 700 R4s and early 4L60Es, did not have this tiny ridge. And because of that, the pump bushings and the front seals were getting sucked out. So early 4L60s and late 700R, all 700R4s came in leaking out the front. And there was usually quite a bit of carnage up here. So in order to fight that problem, they put a ridge here that limits how far the bushing goes, it can move. And then we got the retainer. So you do all those things and you shouldn't have an issue. So the first thing that we're going to do is, now I already know, by the way, that we're in good shape on this particular pump. Run your finger across it. This is just a witness mark, basically. Run your thumbnail across it. There's no gouging or anything, so it's virtually perfect. That means that you really don't need to do the straight edge part, but I will anyway. You're looking to see if there's light underneath the problem is you got too many surfaces involved here. So one way to get around that is to use a feeler gauge, and you're looking to see if there's like a significant amount of light coming in where the wear exists, where this rotor rides. Additionally, by the way, this rotor is almost pristine. There's like no lines at all on it. Whereas a rotor I replaced last week, which isn't this one. Not sure where it was. Anyway, that was pretty gouged up. So anyway, all of these surfaces are good. So they do need a little bit of love, but other than that, they're in good shape. So first thing I'm going to do here is polish things a wee bit. There we go. All right, so what I have found to be the best way, a lot of people beat on this stuff for a very long time. The way I get the pump bushing and the front seal out is starting with some carbon-based anti-gravity tools. This thing used to not do this. So the fastest way and the most effective way I find to do this is with an air hammer. A chisel bit on it. I don't have where are my reading glasses? Oh, right here in my pocket. So we just want to, oh man. So we just want to get right here between this lip and then just deform it. Not too crazy that it and then you want to put all the energy into deforming the seal. All right, that might actually be enough right there. Now what we're going to do is flip it over, figure out where that spot is, get in behind the seal from this perspective, and down and out. There we go. Okay, so once again, because of this ridge up here, you're always going to want to push this bushing down. And right here we have where the bushing is split. So I'm going to go about 90 degrees from where that split is, and very carefully put my tool right here, and just get it to move. Now here's the split. Go about right here, and just get it to move. All right, you can see right there how the split. And now it's this final step here should punch it out entirely. Maybe not. Obviously, of course, you want all of the energy to go into the bushing and none of it to go in here. Although if you do damage this area right here, it's not a big deal because this is where the new bushing is going to go. You always got some red paint left over here, and I don't know why. It's kind of a pet peeve of mine, but I always want to I don't know, use some fine sandpaper here to get rid of that red paint. There we go. Good enough for government work. Okay, and right there you can see where that ridge is. Oh, there's a little damage right there, but once again, that's where the new bushing is going to go, so shall we say not a big deal. So here we got my bushing, and I have my front seal, and I have my bushing installer tool. Over here we go to the press. I need more light over here. It's been on my to-do list for several months now. So the bushing comes out from the front to the rear, and it goes in from the rear to the front. Let's get a good size spread on this like that. Lost my bushing. Rather lose my bushing than lose my mind. So we're gonna put well, actually the first thing that we're gonna do is use any bushing driver, shall we say, just to smash this flush. Use any bushing driver just to get it all the way in there. The challenge is, after you get it flush, of course, is to get it to the exact right level. There we go. So we're just gonna let's go like that. And now we got our pump bushing is down flush, but as you can see, we've still got a little ways to go here before it's right behind the pump bushing retainer ridge. Which I'm not sure if that's what it's called. Maybe I just invented that. So at this point, take this, what I drop, the front seal. I'm gonna put this on here quite carefully. A couple more of these here to take up some of the distance so I don't have to pump quite so much. And then we're going to go down and we're going to carefully, shall we say, observe how this goes down. And we're probably going to change this at least 3 times. So I just want to get it to move. There we go. There we go. It just moved. Okay. So now I'm going to let this up just a wee bit. I'm going to reposition everything just a tiny little bit. Okay, just reposition everything a tiny little bit. And let's see it move again. Okay, it moved. Now let's kind of admire our handiwork here. Let's see how far away we are. 2 questions. Is it all the way in? No. Is it going in straight? So it's a little bit closer on this side than on this side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna favor this side right here a little bit. And then once again, as soon as it moves, I'm gonna check and make sure that it's going in straight and that we're, shall we say, not overdoing it. There we go. All right, done, perfect. Okay, that's exactly the way it's supposed to be. So you got this tapered edge right here that meets where that tiny little ridge is that prevents the bushing from walking out, and it's perfectly straight. Now we're going to install my dropped front seal. Use any bushing driver that's bigger than the front seal. A lot of people just beat this in with the hammer, which of course is fine. That ought to work, but you know, while I'm over here at the press, just get it. Press is gonna make it go in straight every time. There we go, boom. So, got our pump bushing exactly where we want it, and we have our front seal exactly where it's supposed to be. Next step is we want to be sure that the bushing is properly centered. So here we have a Colorado torque converter. I use this one because it's very light and I got it for free. And I don't even need to, so what I'll do a lot of times is just, you know, resize it by beating on it like this. In this particular case, though, I don't have to. The bushing is in perfectly straight, as is the front seal. Oh, old parts, old parts. This is that particular customer's old parts bucket, so let's put that there. So the reason for following a sequence, of course, is this eliminates the possibility of butchering things up. You know, no matter what transmission rebuilder I've worked with, every single one of them at one time or another, you know, Big John one time looked at his bench and saw a bearing and immediately went to my R&R guy and said, stop installing that transmission, pull it back out again. So if putting a transmission together and leaving a part out can happen to Big John, who's the best rebuilder I ever worked with in Howell, Michigan. If it can happen to him, it can happen to anybody. And that's not the first time that that's occurred. So, you know, if you go through and you follow a sequence and do it exactly the same way every time, you eliminate the possibility of forgetting to install stuff or putting parts in out of sequence. So this is not a seal, this is actually a spring. This is the spring cover. Here we have our little tiny 4-turn spring right here. And now we're going to put this in thusly. I used to use lube in order to do this, but all you really need is gravity. I mean, it's not that hard. There we go. Okay, and now line up where that hole is going to go. And on the inside, we have the black spring. And on the outside, we have an orange seal. Now, this might be green, but at factory, these are almost always orange. And I remember that is O and outer, orange and outer, both start with O. So now that we have these in, I'm going to pinch this lightly as I install this post, which almost always goes in just with your fingers. There we go. Okay. And now our next step is going to be to install the spring, for which I need 2 paddles, 2 vanes. So what we're going to do now is open this all the way up thusly. Put one vane here, the other vane here. And we're going to put the spring in the middle. This happens to be a 2-inch clamp. I believe I invented this. I don't know anybody else that does it this way, but I used to chase this spring around the shop all night long. And rather than do that, I kind of figured out my own, I consider this ingenious way of doing this. So now we're going to get the spring centered. So you got your thrust line down the center of the shaft. And there we go. All right, so this is the pocket. So we want to make this pocket as big as possible by moving this apparatus over. There we we go, and we got a rag, and then we got a carbon-based anti-gravity tool. I used to also, I've changed the way I do this part too. I used to get a screwdriver and jam it in. Now I just kind of gently push it in. Should be wearing safety glasses while you're doing this, by the way, in case the spring decides to shoot out at you. It could cause enormous damage. There we go, now we're in the pocket. So now what I'm gonna do is just push a little bit here on the left until it moves. There we go. I'm gonna go right till it moves. Back to the left, back to the right. There we go. Now we need to pull this out, pull our vanes out. There we go. And the spring just happens to be in perfectly straight. I don't need to adjust it. It's exactly where it's supposed to be. All right, so that's our spring installed, and our vanes are none the worse for wear. Now we have our bottom ring, our snowflake, and our, we got human hair, eek. So this only goes on one way. It's kind of mess up proof. There we go, that's the way. Then we got our ring, goes on the inside. And once again, you know, I used to use trans gel to glue it all together, but why do that when you can just use gravity? And here we go. So the vane, now this is gonna be spun from this perspective, it's the torque converter spinning clockwise. So we have what you would call a push side, which would be the anti-clockwise. So from this perspective, this is going anti-clockwise, which means it's getting pushed this way. Right there is your push mark. That long area right there, that's your push mark. And then you've got your two areas right here where the ring touches. You got your bottom ring and top ring. So this is the proper orientation to put this in. So we've got 13 of these to get in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes it's hard to tell. And if you get one wrong, by the way, it's not going to be the end of the world, but this one. See, sometimes it's, I mean, this pump is so unworn, it's hard to tell. Uh-oh, this one is being a rebellion. There's a rebellion going on. To quote Bulb Fiction, there's a rebel in our midst. Coming from British actors. The whole country is a rebellion. All right, there we go. Here is our pump gear is almost fully installed. There we go. And now we got our top ring. All right, and this is probably an unnecessary step, but I do it this way every time. So now we're going to, so you want to make sure that this is easy. If it's a bench unit, you want it to be easy for your customer to install. And because, see, now look at that. So I know the bushing's in the right spot, the front seal's in the right spot, everything's lined up the way it's supposed to be. And if this is an over-the-counter unit, you know, my customer's gonna have an easy time installing it. And if I'm doing it, or I'm having an installer doing it, you know, I just want it to be an easy time for whoever's doing it. There we go. And actually also in the real world, of course, the pump is stationary and the torque converter is turning. As the torque converter turns, so go the days of our lives. All right. Let's keep tools over here and parts over here. So now we're done with the pump front half, and here's our old ring, and this is why you throw old parts away as soon as they're old parts, so you completely escape the mind torture. Did I replace that? Now, once again, here on our pump, this is really just a question of checking things. So we've got two valves in here. We got our lockup valve, or I'm sorry, our boost valve is right here. So does the boost valve move? Yes, it does. And then this is our pressure regulator valve. So does that move like it's supposed to? And right there you can see that it clearly does. Okay, over here we have our lockup valve. I misspoke earlier. And you've got a spring down here. By the way, you can tell this is an updated pump or a new modern pump because it only has one spring here. The older pumps have two. You get it right here, and you can see that our lockup valve moves nice resistance free. It doesn't stick. Let's go down here through this little hole. There we go. Okay. So we got our sealing rings here on the back of the pump. You know, I don't replace these unless they have to be replaced. This controls reverse, and reverse on this thing was pristine, so there's no reason at all to replace those. We do have our little here we go. So I call this the hourglass filter because it looks like an hourglass to me. And I don't have a tool over here to pull it out. All you need is a pair of like needle nose vice grips. Sometimes I just wash this. A lot of times I'll just actually wash this. You know, this is another part. I mean, I don't really see the reason for replacing this. As a matter of fact, now that I look and I see that this is not the correct seal. So, just spray it off a little bit, put it back in. It'll last forever. There we go. Okay, so now the only part that we need to still install, I usually wait until I have the pump all the way together before I take out the filter seal. And so our next step is going to be to put the two halves of the pump together, for which I will need a tool. So we're going to take the pump body and put it on the like that. And this squared off window right here, of course, corresponds to this squared off window right here, where the lockup seal rides. So we're going to drop this in such a manner that they match. Doesn't have to be exact, by the way. Then we're going to follow the bolt holes down thusly. And now it's time for our pump alignment tool. This does not have an O-ring on it. Oh, shoot. So we got our ridge right here. So you want to get the band parallel to the top of this ridge. There we go. Thusly. And at first we're just going to tighten it a little bit, not a lot. And I always line up this hole, and then I line up this hole 180 degrees across. So what does it mean to line up the hole? So we want about the same amount of metal on both sides. So this is kind of like a dead reckoning thing. So this ridge right here seems slightly larger, so I'm going to push this away. All right, it's kind of a feel thing. I don't think I moved it at all, actually. Oh, now I way overdid it. Pretty much back where I was. Yeah. Keep on ending up back in the same spot. There we go. Okay. All right. So now, how much metal's on this side? There we go. Okay. There we go. Now I'm going to go over here. Let's tighten this down a tiny little bit so it's less likely to move since we got this one lined up. Now we're going to go 180 degrees across and line up this one. There we go. So once again, we want the edges to have about the same side of metal on each side, and that way it's centered. Now I overdid it. There we go. All right, now we're going to tighten the band down. Oh, by the way, now we're going to go back over here to our original one and make sure that that hasn't changed much. And unfortunately it has. Damn it. There's other ways of going about doing this. Some people do it actually inside the case. There we go. All right, so I got this one back to where I wanted it. There we go. Okay. This time I mean it. Yeah, now this one moved. Yeah. There we go. There we go. All right, now we're going to put in our 5 bolts and hold our pump halves together thusly. And then we're going to use 3/8 here. This is on the lowest setting. We are going to torque this. Not that low. There we go. 18.5 pounds. This happens to be set for not 18.5 pounds. There is 15 right there. This is 19.5. It's supposed to be 18.5, but this is a deep well socket, so we're going to lose a little bit of torque, so I add a pound. You might even call it a Kentucky windage. Dead reckoning. There we go. All right, let's get our 8mm back out. There we go. For some reason, this bolt is just kind of persnickety. I don't know why it doesn't want to. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to press down, pinch these together just a wee bit. So make sure that they grip. They're not going to fall off. And this goes right here. Push. Click. There we go. This one goes right here. Push, and should feel like a clicking sensation when it bottoms out. I believe that's about where it's going to go. Then, of course, it's ready to be plugged in when we install the wiring harness. First, that 8mm bolt has to be tightened up a smidge. And we need to replace the filter seal. Got our 2-tab. So now, as you can see, we have only tools, no parts, because we're done. I'm going to need this 3/8 over here to drive this in. And then our last step is going to be to replace this seal. Might have to come back and get some of this stuff here in just a minute. We go. Now look, here we go. Here's our front seal retainer. Now there's no way, this shows up on my checklist twice, so I make it pretty much impossible to, shall we say, leave out. So now to do the front seal, what we're gonna do is open up our vise here, nice and wide, because we're gonna have to put it in with two blocks of wood, obviously to protect the aluminum. We do not want to get a death grip on it, just enough of a grip to where we can get this seal out and reinstalled. There we go. All right, now the best way to do this is with, well, there's actually several different ways. Basically, we're trying to tap this out, so you want to get underneath it and then lift it up without damaging this lip, or right here. This is actually the toughest, the fattest part right here, but it doesn't always want to come out. And sometimes you got to get a little bit medieval, which of course you don't want to do when you're working on an aluminum pump. So, uh-oh, tighten this just a little bit more. There we go. It's out, the old one. And the new one installs nicely with usually about an 18 millimeter, 19 millimeter socket. We'll get it back in where we want it, nice and straight. And so we're using this as basically a seal installer. Should just go a tiny little bit under. There we go. All right, now we got our 2-tab washer and our front seal retainer. 2-tab washer we're just going to install. By the way, the 2-tab washer does appear on my inventory more than once because this is another part that's somewhat easy to, you theoretically could put one of these together without it. And if you did that, I really doubt the pump would probably explode when you're lift checking it, is my guess. There's a generous amount of green lube here. Glue it in. Okay, this 4-tab thrust washer only goes in one way. So this is the way it installs. This is the right-hand side, and this little tab right here goes about 5 o'clock. Once again, you kind of can't do this wrong. Oh, it looks like I'm trying to find a way. Here we go. Well, huh. This usually goes right down here at 5 o'clock, but here we go. All right, there we go. A couple light taps. Then we're gonna hit these a little bit. There we go. Put a little bit of lube in here inside this bushing. And a little bit of lube in here inside this bushing. There we go. And then a little bit of thin lube on the outer diameter so it slides in easily when it's time to install it. There we go. Pump is ready to go in, reverse drum is ready to go in, and input drum, now we're going to do 3rd and 4th gear.